It was a little past midnight when I took the wrong exit off the highway. I had been driving for nearly 6 hours, and exhaustion had settled deep into my bones. My eyes burned, my hands were stiff from gripping the wheel, and my brain was foggy. The road signs had started to blur together, just meaningless green and white smudges. Then I saw one, rusted, bent, barely readable. I don't even know why I turned. Maybe I thought it would be a shortcut. Maybe I just needed a break from the endless monotony of the interstate. Or maybe the road wanted me to. Either way, I took the exit. I should have turned back. The moment my tires hit the cracked asphalt, something felt off. The road was narrow, flanked on both sides by dense woods. The trees were too tall, too skeletal, their branches clawing at the sky like dead fingers. I flipped on the radio to break the silence. Static. I pressed the scan button. It cycled through channels, but nothing came through. No music. No talk shows. Just an endless, crackling void. That's when the road began to change. It twisted, curled like a snake winding deeper into the forest. The air grew thick, heavy, like I was driving underwater. Even the headlights seemed dimmer, their beams swallowed by the blackness ahead. Then I saw it. A house. Standing alone at the side of the road. It looked old. Ancient, even. The wooden planks were warped and gray, as if the house had been standing there for centuries, forgotten by time. A single porch light flickered weakly, casting long, spidery shadows. As I passed, the front door creaked open. A man stepped onto the porch. At first, he was just a shape, a dark silhouette against the dim light. But then my headlights washed over him, and I saw his face. His eyes were wide, unblinking, too bright in the darkness. His mouth stretched into a grin that was too big, too full of teeth. Like he had been expecting me. A cold, clammy fear crawled up my spine. My foot pressed the gas pedal before I even realized what I was doing. The car roared forward. The road twisted again, curving deeper into the trees. My heart pounded. I gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. But the road didn't end. And then I saw it again. The same house. The same flickering porch light. The same man. Only this time he was closer to the road. Waiting. My hands trembled. My breath hitched in my throat. I slammed the brakes. The tires screeched against the pavement. The car shuddered, came to a stop. My breath came in ragged gasps. No, this wasn't real. I turned the car around so fast I nearly skidded into the trees. My pulse hammered in my ears as I sped back the way I came, tires kicking up gravel. But the road didn't change. The trees blurred past, but they all looked the same, barren, twisted, skeletal. Then a voice. Soft. Right behind me. You're going the wrong way. I choked on my own breath. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. And I saw him, sitting in my back seat, still smiling, his head tilted, his teeth glinting in the dim light. His eyes, wide, hollow, impossibly deep, locked onto mine. I let out a strangled yell, my body jolting in terror. My hands jerked the wheel. The car swerved violently. The tires hit something, maybe a rock, maybe a ditch, before the world flipped upside down. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. My skull slammed against the window. And then, darkness. I woke up to silence. My head throbbed. My body ached. I was upside down. The car had flipped, the windshield shattered into a spiderweb of cracks. Blood trickled down my forehead, warm and sticky. For a second, all I could hear was my own breathing. Shallow, ragged. Then, footsteps. Slow, crunching against gravel. Getting closer. A shadow moved outside the broken window. I tried to move. My fingers clawed at the seatbelt, but they were weak, trembling. My body wasn't listening to me. The footsteps stopped right beside the car. And then, a hand reached in. Long fingers, bone-thin, curling against my face. I flinched. A whimper escaped my lips. The fingers tilted my chin up. And I saw him. The same wide eyes. The same impossible grin. Up close, his skin looked wrong. Stretched too tight, like it barely fit over his skull. His mouth moved. But his voice came from inside my head. You never should have come back. Then everything shifted. The world twisted, rippling like heat waves on asphalt. My vision blurred. For a second, I wasn't in the car anymore. I was somewhere else. Somewhere dark. The trees were gone. The road was gone. The house loomed in front of me. Bigger now. Taller. Like it had grown. The porch light flickered. The door creaked open. And this time, I stepped inside. The room was cold. Stale. The air smelled of dust and decay. I wasn't alone. Figures stood in the corners. Shadowy. Motionless. Their faces were wrong, blurry, shifting, as if I was looking at them through warped glass. And then, one by one, they turned to me. Their mouths opened, moving in unison. Their voices layered over each other, a chorus of whispers. Welcome home. My chest tightened. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. I turned to run, but the door was gone. Only darkness remained. And in the shadows, something moved. Something huge. Something hungry. I screamed. I woke up in my car. Sunlight filtered through the trees. My head throbbed. I was sitting in the driver's seat. The windshield was intact. The road stretched ahead, empty and normal. A dream. It had to be a dream. I exhaled a shaky breath, forcing my hands to stop trembling. I reached for my phone. No signal. The GPS was blank. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine hummed to life. Relief flooded through me. I put the car in drive and pressed the gas. The road ahead was different now, wider, brighter. No more twisted trees. No more static. Just a normal, empty highway. I drove for miles, waiting to see a familiar sign. Waiting to feel normal again. And then, I saw it. A house. Standing alone at the side of the road. A dim porch light flickered. A man stepped onto the porch. Smiling. Waiting. And as I passed, I saw the for sale sign planted in the yard, and my own name written on it. It was close to midnight when I realized I was running low on gas. The highway had been empty for miles, nothing but a stretch of cracked asphalt and endless trees on either side. My headlights cut through the darkness, but beyond that was just an abyss. The fuel gauge needle dipped dangerously close to E. I cursed under my breath. The last sign I had passed said the next town was 40 miles away. I wasn't going to make it. Then, like an answer to an unspoken prayer, I spotted the gas station. It sat alone at the side of the road, an ancient-looking structure with faded red paint peeling off its wooden walls. A single flickering light buzzed over the entrance. The open sign in the window glowed weakly, like it was running on its last breath of power. There were no cars, no movement. Just a single rusted gas pump standing in the center of the lot like a tombstone. I should have kept driving. I should have taken my chances with the empty road. But I didn't. I pulled in. The place felt wrong the moment I stepped out of the car. The air was heavy, thick with something stale, like old wood and dust. The trees surrounding the lot stood too still, as if they were holding their breath. I reached for the pump. No attendant. No service bell. I glanced toward the building, half expecting to see someone watching me from the darkened windows. But the station looked empty. Abandoned. Still, the open sign hummed in the window, insistent. I honked the horn. Nothing. I was about to leave when a voice rasped behind me. Need a fill up? I spun so fast I nearly tripped over my own feet. The old man stood just a few feet away. He was thin, almost skeletal, with a long face and hollowed-out cheeks. His clothes were old, tattered, hanging off him like they belonged to someone else. But the worst part, the part that made my stomach turn, were his eyes. Milky white, clouded over, like he had been dead for years. I forced a breath. Yeah, I said. Just enough to get me to the next town. He grinned. His teeth were yellowed, some of them sharp. Go inside, he rasped. Pay first. Something in me screamed don't. But I was running on fumes. With a slow nod, I stepped toward the station's front door. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Inside, the place was wrong. The shelves were lined with dust-covered snacks, brands I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Bags of chips with faded logos, candy bars with warped plastic wrappers. A row of soda bottles sat on a shelf, their labels peeling, the liquid inside thick and syrupy. The air was stale, thick with the scent of mildew and something else. Something rotting. The counter was empty. No cash register. No clerk. Nothing except a single yellowed newspaper sitting right in the center. My stomach twisted as I stepped closer. The headline read, Gas Station Massacre, Attendant Kills 5, then Himself. My mouth went dry. A grainy black and white photograph sat beneath the words. I leaned in, and my blood ran cold. It was him, the old man. Same sunken cheeks. Same empty, lifeless eyes. I took a step back. My breath hitched. This had to be some kind of sick joke. I turned to run, but the door was gone. I stumbled backward, my pulse slamming in my ears. No. It had been right there. I had just walked through it. Now there was only a solid wall where the exit had been. My chest tightened. This isn't real. I turned back toward the counter. The newspaper was gone, and in its place sat a gas can. Full. Waiting. The lights flickered, and a voice whispered from the dark. Fill her up. I spun around, my heart hammering. The old man stood in the doorway. Only now he wasn't just thin. He was withered, his skin stretched too tight over his bones, his grin wider, sharper. His fingers too long, curling like claws. I staggered back. What the hell is this? I choked out. His lips twitched, that same rotting grin widening. This place don't let you leave empty-handed, he whispered. Gotta take something with you. My breath shuddered. My eyes darted to the gas can. No, this wasn't happening. The walls creaked. The shelves rattled. The air thickened, pressing against my skin like invisible hands. I lunged for the gas can. The second my fingers touched it, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Then, the whispers started. Soft at first, then louder. A chorus of voices overlapping. I clutched the gas can, my fingers tightening around the handle. The whispers grew, filling the space, pressing against my skull. Then, I felt it. A hand. Cold. Clammy. Curling around my wrist. I screamed. I don't remember leaving. 1 second, I was trapped in that pitch-black nightmare. The next, I was in my car. The gas can sat in the passenger seat, full and waiting. The station was gone. No building. No pump. Just an empty lot, covered in dead grass and broken pavement. The engine was running. The fuel gauge read full. I drove until I saw the lights of the next town, my hands shaking against the wheel. I didn't stop until I found another gas station, one that was real, with bright lights and other people. I stumbled inside, still shaking. The clerk gave me a weird look. You okay, man? I nodded, swallowed. Then, hesitating, I asked, that gas station down the road, you know the one? His brow furrowed. What gas station? The one a few miles back. It had an old guy working there. The clerk's face paled. Buddy, he said slowly, ain't been a station on that stretch of road in 25 years. I stared at him. No, I gestured outside. I was just there. He shook his head. The old place burned down back in '99. Attendant lost his mind. Killed 5 people before setting the whole damn place on fire. My mouth went dry. I turned and froze. Through the station's glass window, out in the parking lot. The gas can was sitting in my passenger seat, and next to it, a set of white, milky eyes, watching me, smiling. I was halfway home when the road signs stopped making sense. The first one I saw just said, "Dead end." No street name, no exit signs, just those 2 words in bold white letters. I frowned but kept driving. Probably a prank, I told myself. Some kids messing around. Then I saw another one. Dead end. And another. Dead end. My fingers tightened around the wheel. Something felt off. I hadn't seen another car in miles. No exits. No intersections. Just a long, empty road stretching into the dark. The GPS was no help. Just a spinning loading symbol. My cell had no signal. I thought about turning back. But then, my headlights flickered. Just for a second. Long enough to make my stomach twist. And then I saw it. A figure standing in the middle of the road. I hit the brakes. Tires screeched against the asphalt. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, silhouetted in my high beams. Slowly, I leaned forward. My pulse pounded, and my breath caught in my throat. It was me. Same jacket. Same face. Same wide, terrified eyes. I gasped. My foot slammed the gas, and I jerked the wheel to the right. The car skidded onto the shoulder, gravel kicking up in a thick cloud. My heart hammered. My hands shook. I turned back toward the road. The figure was gone. For a long time, I didn't move. My fingers hovered over the ignition. My mind scrambled for an explanation. A trick of the light? A hallucination? Then I glanced at the rearview mirror. And I saw it. My reflection. It wasn't moving. I was sitting there, panting, chest rising and falling, but the reflection just stared at me. Expressionless. Unblinking. My throat closed up. Then, slowly, impossibly, it smiled. I slammed the door open and stumbled out of the car. Cold air hit me like a slap. My breath came in ragged gasps. I turned to face the mirror again. The reflection was gone. I swallowed hard. My pulse pounded in my ears. I needed to leave. Now. I forced myself back into the driver's seat and gripped the wheel. The car hummed to life beneath me. I pulled back onto the road, pressing the gas harder than I meant to. I kept my eyes forward. Didn't check the mirror. Didn't look at the road signs anymore. Didn't look at the passenger seat, where I could feel someone sitting, breathing, smiling. I drove faster. The road stretched on forever, but I ignored the suffocating fear clawing at my chest. I just needed to get home. Then, a flicker in the corner of my eye. I clenched my jaw, refused to look, but the whisper came anyway. "Where are you going?" A chill ripped down my spine. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. I didn't answer. Didn't dare. My pulse pounded as the whisper came again. "Where are you going?" The voice was wrong, like my own, but distorted. Twisted. I pressed the gas harder. The road signs blurred past. Dead end. Dead end. Dead end. The whisper turned into laughter. Low at first, then rising, filling the car, echoing in my skull. Then, the headlights flickered, and the road ended. I yanked the wheel too late. The car fishtailed, skidded, and then, darkness. I don't know how long I was out. When I came to, my head throbbed. My vision swam. I was still in the driver's seat. The car was perfectly fine. No crash. No impact. But the road was gone. No asphalt. No markings. Just nothingness stretching into the distance. A dead end. I swallowed hard. My breath came in short gasps. I reached for my phone. No signal. I turned to the passenger seat. Empty. For a moment, I thought I had imagined it all. Then I looked in the mirror. And there I was. Not sitting in the driver's seat. Standing behind the car. Smiling. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember getting out. But suddenly I was outside, standing in the dark. The air felt thicker, the silence stretching, pressing against me. The reflection, no, the thing that looked like me, tilted its head. Then it took a step forward. I staggered back. My lungs refused to work. It took another step, and another, until it was inches from me, until I could see the unnatural twist in its lips. The way its eyes were too dark, too empty. It raised a hand. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Its hand landed on my shoulder. Ice shot through my veins. Then softly it whispered, "You took a wrong turn." The world shifted. I gasped, suddenly back in the car, hands on the wheel, tires on the road. The GPS flickered to life. The signs were normal again. I was back. I didn't stop until I got home. Didn't turn on the radio. Didn't check the mirror. Didn't let myself think about what had happened. But as I pulled into my driveway, my stomach twisted. The house lights were on, and through the window, I saw myself, standing inside, watching, waiting. I don't pick up hitchhikers. Too many horror stories. Too many missing people. The kind of tales that start with some poor fool stopping for a stranded stranger and end with a shallow grave in the woods. But that night, something made me stop. The woman stood on the side of the road, soaked to the bone, her dark hair hanging in wet strands around her face. She didn't wave, didn't move, just stood there, staring at my car like she'd been waiting for me. I should have kept driving. I didn't. I slowed down. I rolled down the window. "Need a ride?" She nodded, climbed in without a word. She smelled of damp earth, like dead leaves after a storm. I tried to make conversation. "Rough night to be out, huh?" She didn't answer. She sat there, hands folded neatly in her lap, fingers long and pale. Her dress, a pale blue thing, clung to her thin frame. It was soaked through, like she'd been standing in the rain for hours. Or longer. The road stretched ahead, dark and endless. The rain pounded against the windshield. My wipers struggled to keep up. The silence between us thickened. Then, as I reached for the radio, her seat was empty. I slammed the brakes. The car skidded onto the shoulder. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. She was gone. Just an empty seat beside me. I reached out, touching the fabric. It was still damp. A trick of the light? Maybe she got out when I wasn't looking? Then, from behind me, a whisper. "Thank you for the ride." I didn't want to look. I didn't want to turn around. But my head moved anyway. She was sitting there, in the back seat, still smiling. I pressed the gas hard. The car lurched forward, tires spinning against the wet road. I gripped the wheel, refusing to look in the rearview mirror. But I could feel her watching me. The air grew heavy. The car smelled wrong, stronger now. Rotting leaves, damp wood. The scent of wet soil. Like something freshly dug up. I licked my lips. Forced my voice to stay steady. "Who are you?" A pause. Then, softly. "You don't remember?" A wave of nausea hit me. No, I didn't. But I should. She was closer now. I didn't remember when or how, but she had moved. No longer sitting in the center of the back seat. She was behind me. Right behind me. Close enough to touch. "You left me," she whispered. Memories scratched at my brain. A different road. A different storm. A car skidding off the bridge. A woman screaming. Cold water. Filling her lungs. I clenched my teeth. No. That wasn't real. That wasn't. A wet, icy hand touched my shoulder. I screamed. The headlights flickered. The world twisted around me. My stomach churned. The road blurred. Then, nothing. Silence. I opened my eyes. I was alone. The car was parked on the side of the road. No storm. No rain. No passenger. Just the faint scent of wet earth fading. I exhaled, shaking, reaching for the ignition. Then I caught my reflection in the mirror. And froze. Because behind me, in the back seat, she was still sitting there. Still smiling. And this time, her lips moved. "Your turn." They found my car by the side of the road. The driver's seat was empty. And in the back, a woman sat, soaking wet, still smiling, and waiting. I was lost. The GPS had led me onto some nameless road, slicing through a dense, endless forest. I had no memory of turning onto it, no idea how long I'd been driving. The road just stretched ahead, cracked and faded, disappearing into the night. I checked my phone. No signal. I exhaled through my nose, gripping the wheel tighter. The trees were too tall, their twisted branches forming an eerie tunnel over the road. My headlights barely cut through the thick fog creeping in from the sides. There had to be an exit somewhere. Then I saw it. A car on the shoulder. At first, I thought nothing of it, just another lost traveler. But as I got closer, my breath hitched. It was my car. Same model. Same color. Same dent on the side from when I'd scraped that parking post last winter. My stomach turned to ice. The driver's door was open. A soft glow from the dashboard lights spilled into the night. And then I saw him, sitting in the driver's seat. I slowed to a stop, my pulse hammering in my ears. He hadn't moved. Hadn't acknowledged me. I should have left. Instead, I opened my door. The night air pressed against my skin, thick and heavy. My own breath sounded too loud, too sharp. The trees didn't rustle. No insects buzzed. No wind howled through the branches. It was dead silent. I stepped closer. The man in the car, me, still hadn't moved. I could only see his profile, his head tilted slightly down, hands resting on the wheel. His clothes were identical to mine. Even the watch on his wrist, same scratch on the face. I swallowed hard. A dream? A hallucination? But the cold sweat running down my back told me this was real. I reached out, heart pounding, and nudged the door wider. The figure turned his head, and I saw his face. His eyes were empty, hollow, like twin voids sucking in the dim light. His mouth opened, not in a scream, but in a silent, gaping hole, as if he were trying to speak, trying to warn me. Then his lips twisted, and he smiled. I stumbled backward, gasping. The ground shifted beneath me. The road, once stretching endlessly forward, was gone. Vanished. Only darkness lay ahead. I turned back to my car. I needed to go. Now. I yanked my door open and jumped inside, locking it, slamming my foot on the gas. The engine roared, but the car didn't move. The trees had shifted closer. Their gnarled roots curled around the tires, holding them in place. I jerked the gear shift, my hands shaking. Come on. Come on. Then, from the corner of my eye, a movement. I turned. The other me was standing at my window, still smiling. His face was inches from the glass, those hollow eyes locked onto mine. I slammed the gas again, praying the car would break free. The wheels spun uselessly. The radio crackled. A voice slithered through the static. You can't leave. I squeezed my eyes shut, shaking my head. No, this wasn't happening. I looked up. He was in the back seat, grinning. I screamed and threw the car into reverse. The tires screeched. Somehow the car moved. The trees blurred past. My headlights flickered. The road twisted. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away. The voice whispered in my ear. You already know how this ends. Something cold touched my shoulder. I didn't look. I just kept driving. Faster, until the road swallowed me whole. And everything went black.